So you're probably wondering why this video is stupidly long for a channel update. Basically, as with a lot of things, I ended up just rambling about a ton of various topics, which are not disinteresting, but they're all going on a lot longer than I expect because I've just got so much I want to talk about, probably because it's been so long since I uploaded the last video. But at the same time, I didn't want to cut all of this because I have recorded it and because it's kind of worth talking about. Some of you might want to listen to it. And so before I actually begin the video, I'm just going to let you know, do use the chapters in the description. You probably won't want to watch everything in this video, but if there's a particular part that you're interested in, use the chapters and your life will be a lot easier. Thank you. Greetings once again, you gentle viewers, and welcome to this update video of sorts. So we are finally here. The second episode of the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke has just released, and I'm releasing this video alongside it. And I'm kind of considering this the real launch of the channel, essentially. I've done a few other videos before, which we'll talk about because I'm going to go over some of the history. But this is kind of where I consider the real start to begin. It wasn't intended to be like that, but it's how it's ended up. Just to give you some context, this video is being recorded quite a few weeks before that actually happened. It's currently the 27th of April, but I know that's probably a few weeks before you're actually seeing this video, because I know I still have a few things I need to finish up. And I know that the month of May is going to be a little bit busier for me. I just happen to have a lot of plans. So I'm expecting that you're probably seeing this video in June, probably just around the 3-year anniversary of the very first Xenoblade Nuzlocke video, which is crazy that it's been 3 years. And so because I'm recording this earlier, it still doesn't quite feel real to me. You know, the emotions aren't quite there yet about the actual launch. You know, the video's not quite done, but it's in a good enough place that I wanted to start making this video now, start preparing a few of the other things that I need to get ready before the big channel launch. And so similarly, just to acknowledge, if you're expecting this video to contain any kind of feedback from the second episode, I haven't seen it yet. I've got no idea how people have responded to it. Worst case, I've just been cancelled by everyone for some joke I made, and this video is completely pointless. Hopefully that's not happened. So the purpose of this video, this is actually the second time I've recorded this video. The first time was way back at the start of January, because I thought I was almost done with everything. You know, I thought the video was almost done, I'd prepared some other stuff, and I thought it was almost there. And basically what's happened in the last few months is I've discovered a bunch of ways I want to improve things. That's kind of true over a long time, and I'm going to go into some more detail about the troubles I've been facing and why this video took so long. That's kind of the purpose of this video. So this does mean that this is the second time I'm recording everything, which is slightly annoying, but it also means I've got a slightly better outlook on things now. I know that it's been 3 years from your point of view, well, from my point of view obviously as well, but I think it's a good thing this wait happened. You know, I've learnt a lot. I think I am, and the content is much better than it would have been otherwise. This video is mainly just to talk, and for those of you who are interested in just, I guess, learning a bit about me and just interested in what's coming next. And that's kind of the purpose of this video. There's a few different purposes, but the general kind of vibe is just to talk about my experience making this video, why it took so long, what I'm envisioning for the future of the channel, and stuff like that. I mentioned at the very end of the second episode, which hopefully you've watched before watching this, I mentioned at the very end of that video that I was wanting to do some kind of director's commentary over the Nuzlocke videos. I wanted to do some streams where I was just describing the process and talking about things to chat. And this video is kind of your first insight into what that could look like, but obviously from a solo perspective, with me just sitting here recording. So this video is going to be much more unscripted compared to my usual content. That's not quite true. I do have a lot of bullet points in front of me. I present and work so much better with a script, with a rough plan, rather than just talking off the top of my head. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with streams, because obviously I'm not going to have a script in front of me, and that's not to say the streams will be bad, but they might be different. And so I wanted to strike a balance in this video where I do have a number of points and a number of things I want to talk about, so I've got some bullet points to help me work through that. But at the same time, I felt it was wrong for this video to be an entirely scripted production, because it's not as genuine as to who I am and what I'm trying to talk about here. So just be aware that if this video sounds a lot more all over the place compared to normal, if I stutter over my words a lot, if I just kind of can't think of something to say, that might be why. But there are also parts of this video that are very scripted, so it's going to be a mixture of both. And it also means that I wanted to try and reduce the amount of editing in this video, so there is just going to be a lot of us sat here on the title screen with some music in the background. There is some editing throughout the video. I know this because I did it when I first recorded the video back in January, so that I might as well use that since I've already done it. But otherwise, it's just going to be a bit more of a podcast type video. So just to kind of run you through what the different sections of this video look like. In a moment, the very first topic I want to go into is just about the channel's name. I don't want to use the word brand because it sounds a bit formal and corporate, but it is essentially the brand I'm talking about. The channel name and its profile picture, where it came from, what my feelings on it are, and where that goes next. Then I just want to kind of recap some of the history of the channel and just kind of explain why things took so long, where things used to be. I'm going to recap kind of the channel history and just kind of explain what life was like while I was making the first video, and then what changed as I was making the second video and where I am at now. And then I'm going to go into some more detail about the big problems I've had with this video, the anxieties I've had. And then I'm going to go into what I will be doing next. I've mentioned that I want to do streaming of the Xenoblade Nuzlocke. I want to stream other things as well. And I'm going to start giving you some insights into what I'm interested in and what I want to do. And that's the part of the video that kind of spirals out of control and makes the video a lot longer. And I've decided to leave it that way, just to give you a ton of insights. So you'll see when we get there. There are chapters to denote those different sections if you're only interested in a certain part. At the end of the day, I think the person who's benefiting the most from this video is me. I get to finally talk about some things that have been no more than thoughts for the last couple of years or longer. And after having recorded the whole video in January, I sensed that it was really beneficial to me to just put some of those words onto paper. But enough about that for now, we'll get there later. So let's start with the first topic, which is the name and the brand of the channel. So for a while, I have been using the Paragon of Torna username for quite a few years. And this name was just a reference to Xenoblade 2 and had a big attachment to Jin. But in 2022, as Xenoblade 3 was approaching release, I decided to actually take the step and try and make some content from that game. I've always known that the Paragon of Torna username was not unique in and of itself. I know that there are a couple of other people online with the username. So a little ahead of the game's release, I quickly added the numbers 2907 to the username, representing the 29th of July when Xenoblade 3 released. And that was enough to keep the username unique as an ID, but I have known deep down for a very long time that the username itself wasn't unique, and so I was going to look to change it. And similarly, the profile picture as well is just a reference to N. If I am wanting to make YouTube a bigger thing, and I want it to be my place and my personality, then it doesn't necessarily feel right for the brand to just be a reference. You know, it's not about me, it's not a person. So in principle, I wanted to change the username. But at the same time, I didn't want to take suggestions for a new name. I didn't want to just find something different. I wanted to wait until I came up with the right idea. I wanted to know that a new name was going to be the right one. And it's been now nearly 4 years since the game's release, and I've not come up with a better name yet. And the longer it goes on, the more and more I've become attached to the username. You know, although it is just a reference, it is still my username. I am the Paragon of Torna, that's who I am online. And so, basically the point of this section is just to tell you, I don't know, I'm a bit stuck. Just as a clarification, before anyone asks, I don't want to use my real face or real name right now. I'm sure that will change one day, but right now that's not where I'm at. But I still feel like I have a responsibility to do something. You know, it's not a unique username. I wasn't the first to use it, and so I feel like it is my job to change it. But at the same time, I don't know what to do, and I really like the name, and it's hard to let go of. And so, I don't know, this part of the video has no conclusion, really. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on it, but as I said, I'm not really taking suggestions for a new name. You know, that's not how this kind of works. So, I don't know. Oh, and the other point, I've just looked back at my bullet points for the first time in minutes. The other reason I'm uncertain about the username is because it doesn't really have a good short form. If I'm streaming, right, and you want to talk to me in the chat or something, you sometimes use a streamer's name, and Paragon of Torna is kind of too long to have a short form nickname, like for channels. So a couple of examples I've written down, right? You have people like AlphaRad, who are either just Alpha, or Jacob, or you have people like Smallant, who kind of just goes by Smant. You know, it's these 1 or 2 syllable nicknames that are really easy to use. And so the question I have is, what is the nickname that people can use for Paragon of Torna 2907? You know, when I've been in like Discord servers and other places online, the most common thing people call me is Paragon. And I don't really like that because that's the adjective, not the noun. So alternatively, I've asked people to call me Torna. You know, I've gone by the name Torna. And I prefer that, but it's still not in the right place. You could shorten it to POT, but that also doesn't feel right. And there are other games and servers in which I've had a, you know, like a character where I've called my player Jin instead. And so people call me Jin. And that's fine because they don't know it's a reference, and in that community I'm just known as Jin. But I think for streaming purposes, I don't know if any of those names work in the same way. I don't want to be called Jin. I don't want to be called Paragon. And I've also said I don't want to use my real name just yet, so that's not an option. But there's got to be a short form, right? Because when a streamer comes online and says, oh, hello guys, it's Jacob here, you know, it's Samant here, it becomes a nickname. And I currently don't know what mine is going to be. So you people in chat in the future live streams can call me whatever you like right now. Maybe don't do that. So as I said, this section's been a lot longer than I expected, but I just don't have a conclusion at the moment. So let me know anything you think, and we'll see what happens. You know, it could just be that there's a name that ends up, it starts as a joke and ends up as the name. That's how some things are born, right? So that was kind of the first topic. I think that segues quite nicely into the history of the channel. You know, what happened after I changed the username. One of the reasons I want to do this is because I might make a video of this style once a year. I might mark the anniversary of the channel every year in June. Even if it's not technically in June, that feels like the right place to mark it. And I might make this style of video where I recap the previous year and then look forward to the next year. And so because this is the first time we're doing that, I obviously have to give the whole context behind the channel in the first place. So just to kind of work through what happened at the beginning. When Xenoblade 3 came out, I recorded and started releasing videos that were basically just a Let's Play. The audio quality was horrible, the videos were not that interesting, but I did it, and it was a very interesting experience. The main thing I learned from it is it was harder than it looked. You know, that was the main thing I learned from it. But I did enjoy doing it, and I enjoyed getting to do it with Xenoblade. I never really expected people to actually watch the videos. I know this sounds weird, but like, I never really expected the number of views to be there, or a number of subscribers to be there. I was never really checking that. And the main purpose of it was just because I wanted to try it. You know, I've grown up watching people do YouTube. I've grown up watching various Let's Plays, and I've wanted to actually do one for a really long time. And both because of my relationship with Xenoblade and also the time I was at in my life, Xenoblade 3 felt like the right time to do that. So I gave it a try, and it was a good experience. I never ended up releasing the full Let's Play, but I do still have all the video files. I can't bring myself to get rid of them. And I did record the entire of the main story, as well as lots of the side quests. I even recorded some of the post-game. But my passion for doing so was kind of dwindling, definitely on the editing side, and so that's why that stopped. I also started a new job around that time, and that's probably one of the reasons why the passion just kind of dwindled a little bit. But I also knew it's because the style of content didn't work. I knew that Let's Plays didn't really work anyway these days, and I kind of always knew that the Let's Play was as much about my experience as anything else. And so I then looked forward to doing a different kind of video. In October of that year, we got the sequel to Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which, if you don't know, was actually a really good strategy game. You know, I know it's got the word Rabbids on the front, and that puts a lot of people off, but genuinely, Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle was actually a really solid strategy tactical game. It really was. And so a lot of people like myself were really looking forward to the sequel. Now, whether the sequel is a good game is a different story. I never actually played beyond the first world, and what I've heard is that it just wasn't as exciting as the first one. But I did record that entire first world because I was going to try experimenting with a slightly different style of content that was much more like gameplay highlights, you know, that was more edited down compared to where the Xenoblade Let's Play was not quite just raw footage, but it lacked a lot of editing. And so with Sparks of Hope, I tried to do something a bit better, a bit funnier, and just experimented with a couple of types of editing. I released 2 videos on that, which were still not great, you know, compared to what I've released today, but they were a step improved, and I really liked coming up with the inside joke about Rabbid Mario, the one-turn menace. That's an old joke that will always stick with the channel. I still find that funny. But similarly, I lost my motivation. I never made a 3rd video, which I was planning to do, and that's kind of just where my motivation fell off. I then didn't do anything YouTube related for at least a month or so. You know, we're heading right towards the end of 2022 now. And this is where the Nuzlocke begins. I came up with the Xenoblade Nuzlocke idea during my first playthrough of Xenoblade 3, the Let's Play. And I know I did that because very recently, for the first time, I went back and listened to my reactions to some of the big moments in Xenoblade 3. You know, I never finished editing the Let's Play, and that finished kind of around the end of Chapter 4. But I recorded the rest of the game, but I never listened to it because I never edited the videos. And so for the very first time, since I ever recorded it, for the first time, I went back and listened to my reaction to Chapter 5 and, you know, the big moments, and to the very end of the game. And as we're going through the credits, I say, I've got another idea. There'll be a more scripted kind of video. And it was really touching to hear that from myself, you know, medal around my neck, Obama meme in here. I said at the very start of the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke video that I had the idea for a long time, but I wasn't actually sure if that was true, and I couldn't remember where that came from. And now I do. I did have the idea in the first playthrough, and it was so fun to look back on that. But I didn't do anything about it until December the 21st, 2022. That is the day on which the very first recording of the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke took place. It was about an hour and a half of gameplay. I did the prologue, and that was it. But if you want to mark a date in your calendar, December the 21st, 2022 is it. The save file itself is 3.5 years old. And that's what's kind of weird about this whole series, is although for you guys, you've just had the second video, for me, the Nuzlocke idea has been a part of my life for nearly 4 years, and it's been this thing in the back of my mind for that long. So about a week later, you know, right at the end of December, start of January, I started scripting and editing and recording, and I did about the first 10 minutes of the first video in about 3 days, and I loved it. I was enjoying myself, and then it just kind of carried on. I did the next set of gameplay, and then I kept kind of scripting and recording. And so, by the way, if you're keeping track of the segments, we're now into the piece where I'm talking about the history of the first Nuzlocke video. For all of its imperfections in things like the audio quality and other bits of polish that could be improved, one of the things I will always love about the first video is it kind of had that indie magic, because my process for creating it was very simply, I would record a segment of gameplay, 1 to 2 hours, then I would write a script for that, then I would record it and probably make some alterations to the script as I record, and then I would edit it. And that was kind of it. There were a few points at which, you know, maybe I marked a piece of editing that needed going over. a line that needed re-recording because there was like a bump in the microphone that just didn't sound good. But for the most part, my first draft of that video was what you got. There wasn't a whole lot of quality control that I did. And so when you bear that in mind, it actually came out really well, I think. You know, even recently, to kind of get my confidence back, I went back and watched the whole video just in one sitting, and you know, I found myself laughing at jokes that I'd forgotten I wrote, and I don't really know how to describe this, but I want to come back to that phrase I used. It had that kind of indie magic to it. You know, it wasn't overthinking like, how do I make this exciting? How do I keep viewer engagement? It was just what it was. And obviously that means it probably lacked a certain viewer engagement that meant other people turned off it. You know, I can't really measure to what level of success that had. But at the same time, I absolutely loved making it. You know, I loved the Herbert section. I loved a bunch of the other little witty jokes that I just snuck in all over the place. I'll probably save more talking about the process of making the first video for when we do the actual director's commentary. But obviously the conclusion is that it culminated in the video releasing on the 14th of June 2023. Just to be clear, I don't know the date off by heart. I did have to go and look that up, but I should remember it, because as much as I've got the 2907 in my username to commemorate not Xenoblade 3 itself, but the day I first made a video, and that will always remain the channel's anniversary of a sort, the 14th of June is sort of like the second anniversary. That's going to remain a sort of important date in my life, because as we talked about, the first few videos I put up were not really that great, but this was the first one where I'd found a purpose. I'd found something I really wanted to do, and I was really proud of what I created at the time. And one of the things that I didn't really have time to talk about in the second video was the support that that video got. And I do want to say thank you for the people who supported that video. There's kind of three different clubs of people who supported it. There's people who found it randomly a lot later on. There's people who found it in the algorithm boost that happened in September, October. But there's another club of exclusive people who found that video when it was first released. I don't know their names off by heart, and you're not getting a special reward for it. But at the same time, there is a real warmth I have to those people who really supported that video when it first came out. The people who were the first few comments. I'm so thankful to all of you for just kind of validating some things, just making me feel like it was worth it. I would then say something about how it motivated me to keep doing the series. That's not really true, because I didn't work on the next video for about 2 months. I don't really know why. I was just playing other games. There are a couple of factors to that. One of them is I was kind of just being lazy. There were a couple of other things going on that just meant I didn't quite have the time for a few weeks. But then I did start recording the video in August. And so this is where we do kind of get to some of the main things I want to share. Why the second video took so long. I don't know how in detail I'm going to go in here, because I do want to just save some of this for the director's commentary. But the very baseline is, I feel that this video had an incredibly tumultuous creation. Yeah, I think that's really the best way to describe it. So I'm kind of just going to explain the chronology of what happened, and see where it gets us. So in August 2023, I wanted to start live streaming the Xenoblade 3 run. And I did, I believe, 2 live streams. The first one was kind of a test, but it was public. And then I kind of made a small video on the channel announcing, oh, I'm going to be streaming the Nuzlocke, do come and join. And I was kind of doing something very typical small content creator, where I had a perhaps naive expectation as to what the results of that would be. So when I did the second stream, I genuinely expected that there were going to be some people who turned up and like chatted and whatnot. And this was kind of the launch, and this is kind of when we were doing stuff. And no one turned up. No one turned up. And that is not a criticism of you people. It's just a fact of life. This was, of course, when the video was smaller. This was before the big algorithm boost that happened, which is another reason I was naive about it, because I should have known that the capacity wasn't there yet. So, you know, I think I was wrong to believe that. But just in terms of the timeline, the fact is, I was incredibly demotivated by that. The stream is still public on YouTube. I've never wanted to take it down. And you will see that in the last like 10 minutes of that, I just kind of stopped talking and I just turned the video off after like half an hour. It's very easy to say that it's not about the viewer numbers and you just kind of need to practice and do it. And that is true, and I will get onto some of that. But at the same time, not just for me, but for this kind of series in particular, I think streaming it really needs some chat interaction. And so to have no one there kind of broke me for a bit. So I made a comment on the video just saying, actually, I'm going to postpone the live streams until the channel's a bit bigger, when the second video's out, and then we'll start doing more streams. And it should be said, at this point, I was expecting the second video to be out within like 2 months. You know, the world in which the second video was not done in the same year was kind of crazy. And I was coming up with lots of other projects I could do, like other series based on other games that were coming out. And you can kind of sense where this is going. I was just getting excited and kind of biting off more than I could chew without actually planning anything. I never actually started working on different projects, so don't worry, I haven't like put a lot of work that's gone to waste on those other projects. But just kind of that's where my thought process was. Now, after that stream, I did do a couple more gameplay recordings just in the days after that. And so what this meant is that, compared to the first video where I did the recordings sporadically, in the second video, I ended up, probably mistakenly, doing most of the gameplay recording, not most, I did a good chunk of the gameplay recordings all at once, in August 2023. The second video begins in Millick Meadows when we unlock the class system, and that's where I started in August 23, and at the end of that recording session, I finished the fight against Mobius K. So in the context of the second video, that's what, like 40, 50 minutes, an hour maybe? All of that, like 2/3 of this video was recorded in August 2023. That was a really long time ago. So that's a difference that meant there was a big bulk. So then over the coming weeks, I kind of scripted a lot of that, and I was very happy with the scripting I came up with. It's also worth saying at this point that I had a change in my job role in September again, which meant that I was working more hours, which obviously means I had a lot less time to work on the videos. I was incredibly motivated by the algorithm boost that happened kind of over October 23. Over that month, the video gained like 20,000 views, and we rocketed from about 100 to 500, 600 subscribers. That was really motivating, and that's where I was able to actually prove to people in my life, not that anyone had doubted, right? I don't need to give that off. But if anyone was going to doubt what I was trying to do, like working forward with YouTube, I could actually say to them, hey, look, people liked this video, and I was really happy with that. And so I really did try to press on with the video. But for whatever reason, I was just really struggling to come up with good editing inspiration. I had my script, but I was just struggling to edit it. In the first video, I basically just edited the video from start to finish. I suppose one thing I didn't talk about in that section is the way I edited the video is I would bring into the video a new piece of raw gameplay footage with no editing, and I would just kind of start slicing it up and start editing, and it meant that there was, on the left, you have a big chunk of the video that's done, it's finished, it's edited, and on the right, you've got a big chunk of gameplay that's not done, that's raw footage that's not edited, and I kind of just enjoyed the satisfaction of seeing the right side get smaller and smaller and smaller, until you're eventually done with editing, and then you record the next section and then bring that in, and then the process starts again. I think one of the problems I faced with the second video is that because I did all of that recording in one go, my raw footage at first was like 6 hours. But the problem with that approach is it relied on there being the left side to begin with. You know, it's this kind of, I suppose what I'm talking about is the idea of finding it difficult to start a project when you've been working on a previous one for so long. And I wonder if just for the second video, I never quite got that initial oomph. I never quite got the intro, which meant that I couldn't work on the rest of the video. It just felt out of place. And so for a while, the second video was not built from start to finish. It was built piece by piece, just one section at a time where I felt like I had some motivation in a kind of random order. So I would just take this little piece and edit that somewhat, and then I take this little piece and edit that somewhat. And some of those sections weren't even finished. It was just about putting something together. It was about putting a rough draft together so that I no longer had this 6-hour timeline of footage and it actually became more of a video. And I basically just struggled to do that very slowly over time. It took me probably about 2 years to reach that point. I was just struggling for bits of inspiration. I wasn't sure if things were funny. There were a few reasons for this. One of the biggest reasons is because I discovered that I have an over-explaining problem. So those of you who have actually been paying attention to the channel will know that I released a couple of other smaller videos called the Deleted Scene and the Rules. And as I explained in those videos, they just got separated from the main video. Both of those were created and fully edited within the main video itself. And it's especially when you look at the deleted scene, which was basically just me explaining the plot and the characters and everything I missed in the first video. As much as I wanted to explain that, and as much as there are funny bits in that, it just felt so out of place in the video. It wasn't very interesting. It was like 10 minutes of the video that was just a tangent because I thought of something. I'd also bear in mind what you got in the deleted scene was like the 5th edit of that video. So another problem I had over this video was experimenting with audio quality. And basically a very large portion, no, it would be accurate to say that most of the video has been re-recorded at some point or another. And that just took more time. It was to improve the video, and the new audio does sound much better, but it's also more time I lost. I feel like I'm delving into some of the detail that I want to save for the director's commentary, so if I just broadly go over some of the main points of why this video took so long. Number one is audio perfection. I wanted to re-record a lot of the audio because it sounded bad, and that was good, but it took a while. The second set of problems is to do with hardware recording. I have learned a lot recently about frame rates and how games don't actually function on a consistent frame rate. They sort of function on a variable frame rate, which means you can't quite record them exactly. And only very recently did I realize some of that. And what that meant is that a couple of my original recordings were laggy, and only recently did I realize how I could fix that. Similarly, the resolution of the video was wrong for some of the old recordings, so that was annoying. And also HDR, different color spectrums that make the game look different, in my opinion worse. And basically for a combination of all of those reasons, I had to re-record some of the cutscenes so many times. I would re-record all of the cutscenes and then be like, okay, great, now I can replace them all, and I did. And then like 6 months later, I would realize, actually, this video still has this other flaw. The frame rate's still wrong, or the coloring's still off. And basically every time I went to record something, it's felt like something in my setup has changed. It feels like every time I record, I discover a new problem. I think I have finally solved that, but literally only in recent weeks. You know, this is stretching way back to 2023, but only now in 2026 do I feel like I've actually solved my recording setup. That's been one of the most challenging things over the course of this video, is just having to redo things that I've already done multiple times. It gets really frustrating having to re-record the same batch of cutscenes for an hour for the 5th time, and then having to re-edit those into the video in the same way, which takes more hours. So that was another reason, but I think the biggest reason that I've been struggling with this video is that it just felt all over the place. Especially when you consider the deleted scene and the rules video being in it. It felt like the video didn't have any flow, and it felt like it was too slow. The first video is not perfect in this regard, but it seemed to do enough. The first video just kind of felt entertaining to watch. I mean, yes, I know I'm the one who created it, so I'm calling it entertaining, but genuinely, even still, I could watch that video and find it entertaining. It feels fast enough Basically, what I'm talking about is pacing and viewer engagement, but relative to some of the concepts that I want to do. I would say my biggest struggle with developing this video has been, what is the purpose of the video? I guess that's actually a question I'm really struggling, no, not really struggling, but I have struggled with. Because as much as this is a Nuzlocke challenge run, at the end of the day, one of the reasons that clearly emerged for me in the first video was so that I had a series of videos where I could talk about Xenoblade. And I think the struggle I've been having is that I want this to be a video series both about a funny, silly, actual like challenge run about the game, Nuzlocke style, but also a genuine storytelling piece with some actual critical comments on the game, the characters, how it connects to me and to people, etc. And I think you've seen a lot more of that in the second video than the first video, because that purpose has kind of evolved over time. Now, I think most of you will agree that both of those kind of principles are great to have and they can make good videos. But the question, and maybe the problem, is, do they both fit in the same video series? For as much support as the first video got, there is one comment that's always stuck with me that wasn't necessarily a positive comment. And I don't want to suggest that this is like a hate comment that's stuck in my brain, because that's not what it was. I think it was a genuine suggestion, genuine piece of feedback on the video. But essentially, the comment said that the video felt a bit slow. And I think that's completely reasonable. Most people would have clicked on that first video and expected it to cover the entire game. And I'm sure many of you thought that as well. Because many YouTubers, you know, if they made a Nuzlocke video or a challenge run video, don't envision this as a long-term series. It's a one-time video, and the whole story is told in that one video. And I'm not going to blame anyone for thinking that. But it's also stuck with me because it's made me kind of question the whole series sometimes. I have always envisioned the series as being a long-term series. I expected that there were going to be many videos, I don't know how many, and that first video ended at exactly the point I wanted it to. I always expected the first video to be a kind of prologue that ended when we unlocked the classes. But what I didn't expect was how long it would be. I thought the first video would be 20 to 30 minutes, and it was an hour. I'm kind of rambling a bit, so I think I'll try and wrap this up and save it for the director's commentary, but that was really the biggest question that's been plaguing me for a while. Is the video actually entertaining? Does it serve a purpose? Does it make sense? And so that's the final reason this video took so long, because over time, but especially in the last few months, I've just been doing quality control. I've been trying to keep the same concepts in the video whilst completely remaking them to be shorter. Whilst the first video was almost entirely just the first draft of what I wrote, the second video, I would say, has very, very little of the first draft. Compared to the original first draft of the script I wrote and recorded and edited, what you've seen now, I think actually shares very little in common, because I've spent so much time amending those lines to cut bits out and make it faster. I've completely re-recorded audio. I've completely rewritten and remade segments so that they're shorter and faster. But not just once. Some of those segments were re-recorded and remade multiple times. Sometimes I would try and rephrase things to make something clearer, but whilst being shorter, and I do lots and lots of work to make it better, and it just came out longer and worse than it already was. And that was really disheartening sometimes, just to feel like I was getting nowhere and just making something that, yes, I'm sure a number of people would enjoy, but I wanted it to really achieve something. And I wonder if the algorithm boost on the first video actually kind of hurt my feelings towards this. I wonder if that gave me an expectation as to what numbers the video should do, or as to how people would react to it. And although I said a lot of those feelings are historical, that's not entirely true, because, as I said at the start, I'm recording this in April, a few weeks before the video releases. And so I still don't really know how people are going to react to the video. I don't know whether it's good. I don't know whether it's better than the last one or not. There definitely are ways in which it is, and I do believe that it's still good, and there are ways in which I can remind myself that it is funny, it is still telling a story, and at the end of the day, it is doing what I want it to do now, whilst being entertaining. So I think I have reached a point, but the biggest factor I just want you to take away from this is it's taken me so long to get there. I think I've learnt a lot along the way, and I think I've definitely been plagued by the fact that this video has taken so long as it has. I barely remember what it's like to have a life where I'm not working on this one video in the back of my mind. This one video has been at the back of my mind a constant thorn for the last 2.5 years. That's not to say I hate it. I do like it, and I like working on videos, but at the same time, it will be so relieving to have it actually done and out there. Some of the preparation I have been doing over time is playing the long game. Once I realized that this video was going to take so long, I just decided not to try and rush it, not to try and get it out to keep up the viewer base I had from the first video, and just to accept that the first video was like a proof of concept. It was like a pilot episode. There were a bunch of people who watched it, they liked it, and so now I can go in with the confidence that hopefully people will still like this series. And so I played the long game, trying to prep a few other things, and that's why I've got a few more professionalisms now, like the ending card to the videos. And I really do hope that this is a problem that doesn't stick for every video. I do believe that with all the things I've learned, the next video will be so much easier to produce. So if you want any more specifics on specific sections that were redone, or what lines were changed, or whatever, you'll probably find that in the director's commentary. Also, the final problem that I forgot to mention, I'm recording this later on, but the final thing that I didn't mention as to why this video has taken so long is discipline. It's personal discipline. When I say, oh, I've got no time to edit because I'm so busy in my life, do I actually have time, or am I just kind of gaming and lazing and procrastinating? And there was definitely a long time where I was working on the video gradually, but I think I could have done more. And so, you know, if you look back to kind of 2024, early 2025, I think there was probably a lot of time I've wasted there. If your goal is to work on videos, there's time I've wasted. But the good news is I think that's improved in the last 6 months or so. I'm much happier to work on videos now as things have come together, as the motivation's been there. What this means is that the production of the next video should be a lot faster than the previous two were. I will get onto that when we talk about the next video. I'm going to try and segue now onto what happens next. What does the next video look like? And if this one took 2.5 years, 3 years, how long is the next one going to take? And stuff like that. Because the future is also full of problems and anxieties, and that's definitely true of a couple of things I want to talk about. So let's just start with some basic expectations. What can you expect for the channel going forward? As I've mentioned, I want to start streaming, and I'm probably aiming at this stage to stream once or maybe twice a week. That's kind of what my time allows for at the moment, and I think that's a good place to start. I'm also thinking of setting the expectation that those streams will last around 2 hours each. This could obviously change and could be quite flexible, but I've seen a few other channels do this, and I think it's a good goal to aim for. If a stream is shorter than 2 hours, then it kind of just feels too short and doesn't get properly involved into what you're doing. But if it's longer than 2 hours, the creator can start to get a bit burnt out, and depending on what chat response is like, or what the kind of mood of the stream is, it can start to get quite draining, and especially if viewership is low, it can be hard to keep a stream going for longer than that. So this could be flexible and could change, but right now I'm thinking that streams are going to be about 2 hours each. But what will I be streaming, you ask? Well, let's just start with what's happening next with the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke. Whilst I do have other videos I want to create, I think the Xenoblade Nuzlocke is probably going to be my only series at the moment. I don't have a particular idea or feeling about another long-term series that I want to create right now. So the Xenoblade Nuzlocke will have my main focus overall, over time. However, there is a real big problem, or strictly a real big worry that I have, that I want to talk about and see what people think. One of the general principles I would like to keep is that the streams of the Nuzlocke don't go too far ahead of where the videos are. I don't want the streams to be going at a much faster rate than the videos, partially because I just think it will offset my rhythm. I think I'll just become demotivated to do any more. But I also kind of think it's healthy for the content if they kind of work at a similar rate to each other, if they're kind of kept in balance. So I really want to keep that going forward. That's not to say that the streams can't be ahead of the videos, but I'd like to keep the distance in check. So I would expect that the streams are always going to be a little ahead of the videos, but not months and months. Now that's fine, but the problem is that my editing pace has to keep up with the streams. So let's say that once a week for 2 hours I stream the Xenoblade Nuzlocke, right? There's 2 hours of footage I get out of that. And essentially what I'm saying is if I did that once a week, then I have to edit, I have to script, record and edit 2 hours of footage a week on average. It doesn't have to be that specific 2 hours of that stream that got done in that week, because the streams might be ahead by some time. But if I want them to keep a rough pace, I have to edit that much in a given week. And my problem is, I just don't know whether I can do that. I don't know whether I can keep up with one stream a week for editing. I just don't know whether I can edit that much in a week. It is of course a little bit dependent on what happens. Some of the streams will probably have a lot less to take from them than others will. But if we go through like an actual story segment and there's a lot of character development I want to unpack, that will take me probably a lot longer to edit. But the fact still remains, on average, I need to get 2 hours of gameplay edited and done in a week. And I just don't know whether I'm going to be able to do that. It could be that I'm overstating this problem, and maybe by working on a new video I'll have a lot more motivation compared to where I was with the previous video. Maybe it will all work out, and maybe the pacing will be fine. But if I'm being realistic, I just don't know if that's gonna happen. So then, working backwards, I have to ask, do I stream the Xenoblade Nuzlocke every week, or am I not able to keep up with that? Is it going to be every 2 weeks? Can I keep up with that? Is it every 3 weeks? I don't know. I just don't know what I'm going to be able to keep up with yet. And it's going to be another big learning curve, because in the last 2 videos, I've been dealing entirely with scripted commentary, but I will now in the future be able to interact with my live commentary on the stream, and I don't quite know how I'm going to play that in yet or not. And so my point here is to say, although I have a lot of motivation, and although I do think the production of this video will be faster than the previous ones, it will not take 2.5 years, I also think there are going to be a number of struggles still. It's another new type of experience compared to the last videos, and because of that, I can't really say how long it's going to take, and so I don't know how often I'm going to be streaming it or not. In the very short term, I will be streaming it every week. As I said, I don't mind the streams having a little bit of an advantage over the video pace, and obviously right now they're completely even. So for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I will be streaming the Xenoblade Nuzlocke every week, and kind of just seeing how it goes, seeing how the editing goes, and beyond that I'll start to be able to judge what I'm able to do next. And beyond that, I then kind of just have to balance. If I feel the Xenoblade Nuzlocke is taking a lot of time, I'm not going to be able to work as much on other videos. And that's okay for a while. I don't mind, but I would like that time to do that. So there's going to be a lot of learning there as well. So the main point I wanted to make here was simply to tell you, I do care about the Xenoblade Nuzlocke and I really want to keep going, but it could be that after a few weeks, the streams start becoming rarer for the Xenoblade Nuzlocke. I'll still be streaming every week, but it could be that the Xenoblade streams get rarer. I don't know how often I'll be doing them, and I'm not going to know for at least another month or 2, probably. And you're just kind of going to have to keep tabs on that. And I'm kind of sorry for that, because I'm also aware that that's not healthy for a series. If I want there to be chat engagement and community engagement in the series, it can't happen too rarely, right? And so that's another big worry I have into the future, that I don't really know what my conclusion is. But we'll just see what happens, and it could be okay. I don't know yet. However, the one thing I really can say for the Xenoblade Nuzlocke is the videos are going to get shorter. One other thing I haven't mentioned about the last couple of videos is they were both much longer than I expected. The first video was, what, 55 minutes? And that ended at the exact plot point that I wanted it to, but I expected it to be more like 20 to 30 minutes. And then even after I released that, I expected the second video to be shorter than the first, and it was, what, like an hour and a half nearly? And that does mean that it takes so much longer to work on, and it means I'm not getting the kind of regular feedback that I think is useful. And so going forward, the Xenoblade Nuzlocke videos are not going to be more than like half an hour-ish, if I can avoid it. Which I'm sure means they're going to be longer than that, because I can't control myself. But I am going to try and make them shorter, and so with all of these factors combined, with my personal discipline being improved, one other thing I think I've forgotten to mention earlier was that I have reduced my hours in my other job role. You know, I've simply changed what I'm doing, and that means I've gotten some of my time back to work on videos more. So essentially, I've got more time, I'm using it more wisely, and in all of the different learnings I've done, I think there is hope that the video will come out faster. As much as I said that I was struggling to find inspiration and work on the video for so long, by the middle of 2025, I'd kind of got to a point where I was happy. You know, the video wasn't done, but out of the footage I had, I'd at least strung most of it together in a somewhat edited video. And that gave me enough confidence to actually do the next bit of gameplay. So after all of that I did in August 2023, I finally did the next gameplay recording in October 2025. There was an over 2-year gap in the gameplay recordings, but I finally got there. And I did the next 2 hours of gameplay or so. I did the Exploring of Colony 4 and Ethel's Hero Quest. And most of that got edited by the end of 2025. So there's your good news, right? When I made that kind of last third of the video, I feel like I was much happier with that. I used more of my first draft. I was just so much happier with what I was writing, what I was creating, and that gave me a lot of motivation. You know, I think some of the best parts of the video are in there, and that all got done within a number of weeks. I cannot possibly tell you when the next Xenoblade video is going to come out, but it will be a matter of months, maybe not weeks, I would say months. Weeks is maybe the most optimistic I could be. You know, I would probably hope that the next Xenoblade Nuzlocke video will be out in about 2 or 3 months. I know I said I couldn't put a number on it, but that's what I'm hoping for. It could be longer than that, and I don't want to set an expectation, but that's what I'm hoping for. And there will be other content about other things amongst that. There are probably 1 or 2 other videos about different topics that will come out before that. So speaking of other content, if I'm not going to be streaming the Xenoblade Nuzlocke every week, who knows yet, then what will I stream instead? What else am I planning to do? What else am I interested in? And this is the part of the video that gets far more rambly. I said at the beginning that I wanted this to be a lot more unscripted, and this is kind of the part of the video where that starts to change. There was just so much I wanted to write. And I've even still, you won't believe this, but I have cut out large parts of the next hour. You won't believe this, but I have cut out parts of the video. I know it doesn't look it, but I do care about the length of my videos, and I've cut stuff out. But in all honesty, the remainder of this video is just a series of rambles about my gaming life, what's changed over the last couple of years, where I've become interested. I want to expand my sphere, and as a result of all of that, and also for content reasons, what I'm going to be streaming in the coming months. So the next section of the video is called the short-term future. This is more about, for content reasons, a few different games that you can expect to see in streams in the near future. It's not a complete list, but it gives you an idea. Then the final main section of the video is a lot more rambly, and it's the long-term future. To put it simply, this is a series of rambles about various niche interests that I have that I kind of want to make content about someday. It's not a complete list, it's a selection of niche interests I have that give you a broad overview as to what I'm interested in, but it's not a complete list, just remember that. I've created another separate list of things that I want to work through, and we'll do that over these years, I'm sure. If you're not really interested in that, then I suggest skipping to the very end of the video just for the outro, but if you are interested, then here are all my rambles about what happens next. Enjoy! So what other content will I be doing? And at this point, I'd like to go down a different rabbit hole and just talk a bit about my gaming history. So I believe that, very broadly speaking, gaming content falls into two different categories. Category 1 is playing new games. The creator playing a game that has recently come out, or one that they just have never seen before. And it's like a first time reaction kind of thing. Category 2, which is the much bigger category, is a creator who has played a game before, but is now playing it with some kind of twist, like a Nuzlocke, or they're focusing on a specific game mode, or some kind of random niche fixation on a game, like, can you beat this Mario game without collecting a coin? Or, what is the total number of tracks in Mario Kart World, what with all the intermission tracks? Any kind of random content like that fits into the second category. You can of course create better categories than this, with more appropriate names, but for the purpose of this video right now, I want to just split it up into these two categories. Games I haven't played, or games I have played, but either want to show off to other people, or try some other particular challenge or game mode or other random fixation I just want to make a video about. My anticipation is that not just my content, but also my general gaming life will forever be a mixture of these two categories. Like everyone, I have a big backlog of new games that I haven't played, but that list also includes some other previous games that I have played before that I want to revisit for some reason. And I have been saving some of that list specifically for the purposes of streaming and content, but not all of them are appropriate for that list. In the last 2 years or so, I've been a bit stuck with new games. I've been really trying to limit the new things that I do because I know that for a couple of weeks, these awesome new games will just take over my life and I won't make any progress on the video, and if I let that happen continuously, I'll never get anything done, right? That's the balance you have to strike when this is technically just a hobby that I do in my spare time, which you should also use for relaxing and playing games. Because the video took longer than I thought, there has been a big period where I've been quite restrictive to myself about what I can buy, and at times it's actually been quite demotivating. But over time, it also means that my list of potential games that I'm saving for content has increased, and I'm now having to work through that list and decide what is appropriate for content or not. Now, when I say appropriate, what I mean is games that fit my current streaming style and style of content. Games that are appropriate for me to play whilst I'm still learning and am perhaps not very confident in what I'm doing. Games that are within my comfort zone, or perhaps ones that are better to be streamed on a more occasional basis. In the last couple of years, I've been starting to really expand my gaming sphere. I used to be one of those people who only really paid attention to Nintendo stuff because that's what I owned, as well as a few other niche indie franchises that either I was gifted as a present at some point, or maybe heard about from a friend in the past. And that's fine, it's okay to just have your little bubble and enjoy the things that you enjoy. But it means that as I started to take content more seriously, I knew that I needed to expand my sphere a bit, and when I started doing things like watching the Game Awards, which Nintendo of course never get involved in, it meant that all of the nominees and announcements of games and all the different things were for games and series and major studios that I had simply never heard of. And bear in mind that this is before the Switch 2, where the Switch 1 didn't have the physical processing power to actually accommodate many of these games, so there was no way I could have played them anyway. Eventually, that changed in 2024, when I finally bought a PlayStation 5, initially for the sole purpose of playing Metaphor ReFantazio, which was a great decision, obviously. But of course, once I was done with that game, this then opened up the avenue to a huge market of potential games that I had never been able to play up until now. As I said earlier, I try to restrict my purchases a little bit. This comes back to the idea of personal discipline, but I did indulge in a couple of purchases. At the time, Astrobot had recently come out and was getting pretty high praise. So I played that for a weekend and that was fun, and I'm sorry to say, the marketing strategy of that game worked, because this one level towards the end of the game, on its own, convinced me to try Horizon Zero Dawn. I didn't have a perfect experience with that game, but it was pretty good. So I then took a few months break from that before buying the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, and that game was seriously amazing. I have a little bit of recency bias because I only played that about 2 or 3 months ago from now, but wow, this might be my favourite game I've ever played so far. Take out that recency bias and it's definitely up there in my top few. Xenoblade will always have a special place in my heart, and probably in principle remain my favourite series of all time, and who knows, maybe Xenoblade 4, or whatever comes next, will reignite a passion that maybe I've lost over the last couple of years, but I've long since come out of the bubble that I now realise I got stuck in, that Xenoblade is this masterpiece series that nothing can really compete with. I knew that I was missing out on big gaming titles, things like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3, games that I was interested in playing, but mainly because they have the reputation to prove their worth, and I basically just hoped that I also liked them. But it was only when playing Forbidden West that I had the definitive proof that there is just so much more out there that I'm not aware of. Things that are not just casual fun games, but also these really impactful experiences and just masterclass. Even titles that came out a few years ago. And now that I'm finally getting through this video being released, that restriction that I've placed on myself for the last couple of years is being lifted. As long as I can keep disciplining myself to have that editing and streaming schedule, that will equally mean I have a schedule of sorts for just my own time, just to play my own things, and I can finally start playing these other games. And it's a nice twist of fate that Forbidden West, the game that really let this loose for me, was one of the other major nominees at the Game Awards in 2022, the same year that Xenoblade 3 got nominated, and why I started caring more about things like the Game Awards, which is what began to expand my sphere in the first place. Say what you like about the Game Awards and some of its fair criticism, but it does serve a great purpose of reminding me and just about everyone of how vast the world of gaming is right now. There are so many games that I haven't even heard of, let alone played. And I'm hoping that I will start to at least indulge in a few other major series. So that was a big tangent on my recent gaming history, but I did want to talk about it. The point of this was that I essentially have a short list of games and or ideas I want to try and play in the future, but for the last couple of years I've been very cautious in what I choose. But now I have the flexibility to kind of do whatever I want. And the decisions I need to make now are which games I use for content or not, bearing in mind that you can only ever experience a game for the first time once. The games that are on my shortlist to play, but likely not on the content list, are more so larger RPGs. The aforementioned Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3, but also including things like the Final Fantasy VII remakes, the Persona 3 and 4 remakes. By the time you watch this video, I'll be playing Expedition 33, and there are plenty more. I really want to play all of those games and are likely to be some of my favourites ever. But to stream these games in their entirety would eventually become very draining with low viewership. Not least with a less frequent stream schedule that I will currently be having. They might work for an initial 1 or 2 streams. For example, imagine the catchy title, I played Elden Ring for the first time, that being 4 years after it came out. But that concept does start to wear off a bit by the 20th stream. And even if I made them into some kind of highlight gameplay video, they're not going to be very interesting or unique, even with my incredibly charming personality. So instead, right now, I'm primarily looking for games that fit one or more of 3 categories. Ones that I have already played, so I can have greater confidence in knowing what to expect. Games with a simple concept that are just a bit of fun and perhaps easier to commentate on. And perhaps also games that are not extensively long, so that they don't necessarily become a burden to the schedule, especially if I don't enjoy them as much as I expect, because it's difficult to leave a series half-finished. We've already talked about the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke, of course, but other immediate plans in the coming months potentially include Blue Prince. I know very little about this game, but I've heard some very good things about it. Some people said it was their Game of the Year last year, so I think it's worth trying out. Since it's a puzzle-based game, I think that makes it easier to commentate on, because you simply have to describe your thought process that you're going through anyway. And I hope that it's more to my natural element, so I'll have a confidence with it. LEGO Horizon Adventures. So as I mentioned earlier, I've become a big fan of the Horizon series, and back at the end of 2024, they released a surprise LEGO spin-off on the series. I don't actually know this for a fact, but I presume that the game is designed to be friendly to new players, as an entry point into the series. So to any potential viewers of a stream, it would be reasonably spoiler-free for the games as a whole. And of course, it then contains much of the LEGO charm that I'm used to from my childhood. I'm hoping that playing this game would be silly, fun, and in an environment that I'm familiar with and enjoy. That will give me the confidence to work with it well in a stream. And finally, for this initial shortlist, Epic Mickey Rebrushed. This one might take you by surprise, but Epic Mickey was a really important game to my childhood. So when a surprise remaster was announced in early 2024, I cannot describe the emotions I felt, and anyone who's in the same camp knows exactly what I'm talking about. I do have a greater purpose for playing Epic Mickey that I want to talk about later, but for the most part, this is just one of those games that I want to stream because I really like it and it doesn't quite get enough appreciation at times. And out of this shortlist I've come up with, this is the game I would have the most confidence playing. And finally, let me also be clear that there are probably other ideas that I've completely forgotten to mention in this video, so this is not a finalized list of my content for the next however many months, they're just provisional ideas. If I go ahead with these, I am anticipating that all of them will be streamed, but only a selection turned into videos. Videos that lean more into just the style of highlights and edited gameplay footage, rather than the fully produced narration that I do for the Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke. That way they shouldn't take nearly as long to produce. I am prepared, or at least I hope I am, for some of these videos and streams to have very different levels of viewership. You've all subscribed to this channel for Xenoblade Nuzlocke, so maybe none of these other things take your fancy. And this will be part of the learning for me as to what works and what doesn't. Beyond these, I do have a list of other ideas, but the plans start to get a bit more vague. So this is the subtle transition, though not so subtle now that I've mentioned it, to the section talking about the long-term future. I heavily debated how to do this next section of the video. Initially, it was going to be very long, with sort of 5-minute rambles per idea, because I wanted to give some of the context behind them to not give any of you a false impression as to what I might be doing. But if I did that, the video would be well over an hour. And as we've already discussed, I need to make my videos shorter and perhaps less detailed, so I'm going to keep this section short. And just bear in mind that some of these ideas will come out of nowhere. These are not just ideas I've had in a content form for the last couple of years, some of these are passions that I've had for a very long time, and some of them probably won't end up being content. I've been wondering about embarking on the principle of saying that every major game or form of media that's been impactful on my life in some way, mainly my childhood nostalgia, should receive at least one video somewhere down the line. I can already tell you I won't stick to that as a golden rule, but it's something I will remember. It gives me some interesting ideas of things that I would like to just talk about that I've wanted to for years but not really had the audience or sometimes friends to do that with. I've already dipped into this by mentioning Epic Mickey. In my original notes for this video, I ended up writing a pretty massive script about Epic Mickey. I have such a passion for this game and a lot to talk about. But looking at the number of words I wrote on a whim just for this video, that should probably be saved for its own topic. So skipping all that explanation, the long story short is, as a short-term goal, I want to do a streamed playthrough of Epic Mickey Rebrushed, as I mentioned earlier, But a medium-term goal I have is to put together a fully commentated and narrated playthrough and 100% guide to the game. It's likely to be a project that I will work on in the background for a long period of time, and probably won't be finished until at the earliest end of this year. But it is something I'm passionate about doing. It doesn't matter to me that the game came out a while ago, it doesn't matter to me how many people actually use it. It's something I have genuinely wanted to do for so many years. And so I'm going to do it no matter how many people watch it, and I'm going to do it just because I enjoy it. Epic Mickey is just one example of the types of niche interests that I want to go into at some point, even if just with one video. It was really tough to condense all of that writing into just that short blurb I've given you, because I really can't wait to talk more about it. Epic Mickey is by far the biggest of these niche interests that I want to talk about, but there are other significant ones that have had a big impact. For example, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. You've probably seen this game played by one of your favourite creators at some point in the past. Believe it or not, it's been out for over 10 years now. If you don't know, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, abbreviated to Kitane, is a co-op puzzle-solving game where you have to defuse a bomb, based on the information in the manual, which is an actual document that goes alongside the game. I think it's one of those one-hit wonder indie games that just about everyone liked, but sadly for most people, wore off after a couple of hours. I always wished that the world had a bit more interest in Kitane. I get that people only like it for a certain amount of time, and it was probably also due to there only being a limited number of puzzles and levels in the game. I haven't done any in-depth research on what this studio has been up to, but all I've seen from the last 10 years is they've ported the game to other consoles and made it in more languages. There's not been any new updates of any sort. So why exactly do I have a niche hyperfixation on Kitane? Mods. Lots and lots of mods. Due to the game's nature of having different modules on the bomb, it was not just practical, but visually simple to understand that you could add mods. And once you unleash that package onto the Steam Workshop community, the forge is lit, and mod after mod after mod gets released, each with a new type of puzzle and challenge, and each with their own custom manual. Again, we're skipping some steps to keep this video short, but the summary is that just playing the base game is the tip of the iceberg of the world of Kitane. And over time, people have put crazy challenges together where they've put lots of different mods into some massive custom levels. This is a much longer term goal because this is a co-op game that involves needing some friends to play it with, but one day with the right people in my life, or perhaps some cool streamer friends I might make along the way, there are some aspirations I have in which I want to conquer the world of Kitane. Whilst we're on the subject of co-op games, we might as well talk about Factorio. If you've not heard of this game and not played it, good, don't. Let yourself be free, because my goodness, this game is so addictive. Again, this is a game I have played with friends in the past that's led to some very late nights, but I've never quite gone into the proper endgame of building a huge mega base. So at some point what I'd really like to do with Factorio is to just do another playthrough that goes much further than I've ever gone before. And that idea came before the massive Space Age expansion that came out a little while ago, and before we talk about mods. The mods, they never end! At the end of the day, the purpose of these games is to scratch a certain itch, because they're designed as problem-solving games that just give you a sense of satisfaction. I really love mental puzzles and problem-solving such as this, and if I had a lot more time to kill in my life, I would probably spend it doing things like these word and number puzzles. You know, things like Sudoku. You've all heard of Sudoku, right? It's a simple game where you have to fill a grid with some numbers. And I would bet that many of you have also heard of things like Killer Sudoku, where you add a few extra variants and rules to make the challenge a bit more difficult. But have you ever seen Sudoku that looks like this? with coloured lines and black and white dots and numbers round the outside. Allow me to introduce you to the world of variant Sudoku, but be careful because it's a deep rabbit hole. All across the world, there is a whole secret industry of Sudoku experts, putting together new exciting puzzles day after day that once again just scratch an itch you didn't even know you had. One day I would just love to occasionally sit on stream and solve some of these puzzles. And who knows, this could become a weekly feature. Sudoku Sunday. I promise it's more exciting than it sounds. Those are some examples of times when I've had previous hyperfixations on specific games that I want to revisit at some point. But why don't we also talk about games I'm playing right now? Alright, it's time to bring out another side of my life. I have a confession to make to you all. I'm a mobile gamer. Now before you make any sudden sweeping assumptions, I'm not talking about these ones. I could be a player of these if I wanted to, but I don't really need any more continuous games in my life. There are 3 major mobile games that have caught my attention over the years, and all of these will be getting a video probably within the next few months. Knighthood I have been playing for nearly 6 years now, and have actually become very active in the Discord community. That's another part of my life I need to somehow reduce my time in. I have an awful lot to say, mainly about the state of the game and the developers, and this will actually be the subject of the very next video that will be coming out in a few weeks. Then we have Clash Royale. I had a big Clash Royale phase, but it's something I care less about now because wow did they make some decisions, and whilst the overall topic and vibe of this video will not be unique, I hope I can bring a slightly different perspective from someone who's a more average and casual player. Finally, Persona 5X. If you didn't know, Persona 5 now has a mobile game. This one's more recent because it only came out in June 2025. And honestly, I have a lot of positive things to say about this game. Its biggest flaw is the gacha system, but beyond that, I think they're actually doing a pretty good job, and that will be a topic of a future video. Another point here is that these 3 games do take up more time in my life than I like to admit. Even if not physical time, it adds a daily mental load of things that I need to do. So if nothing else, making some content about them at least helps me feel that I'm being a little bit productive by playing them. And finally, for the last topic of this video, we gotta talk about Formula 1. Now look, I know this one came out of absolutely nowhere, but in keeping with the spirit of talking about major interests, I have to talk about it. I'm not as techie or specifically car fanatic as many who watch the sport. I'm more in it for the sporting side of it. The seasonal narratives that are created, the weird memes, the stats behind World Championship points, and trying to stay neutral and just enjoying racing. I watch a few different content creators on this side, but again, not for the technical reasons, it's more for reactions and things like predicting the result of a given race. And that's genuinely something I would like to try as well. This might just become something that I engage with more on a small scale level, for example, posts on my Twitter account, or let's say one day we make a Discord for this YouTube community, it could be a channel or a regular feature over there. Just something I talk about with other people and put my thoughts into the air, but without largely committing to any kind of content. But as we reach the conclusion of this video, it might be worth saying that in the long distant future, I could well see my life breaking up into a couple of different YouTube channels down the line. I'm aware that sometimes when creators have a variety of content on one channel, YouTube does weird things to their algorithm that has a clearly negative impact. I'm trying to ignore that idea for the time being and just do what I want, but it is not out of the question that there could, in the future, spring a couple of other side YouTube channels to better cater towards different niches of my interests, and just to have their own little audience and keep things organized. I do not actually aspire to be a Formula 1 content creator, but maybe it would be nice to just have my own little Formula 1 YouTube channel where I can make occasional videos, perhaps with less effort put into them, at whatever occasional schedule I decide. The same could end up being true for the mobile games. But of course, this is all about balance. It's easy to say that a creator should just focus on what they want to do and not what gets the most views. But if I'm serious about upping my game and potentially going full time on this thing one day, then there does have to be a certain amount of money that speaks behind that. And that involves focusing on the series or ideas that most people want to watch. I do of course hope that the biggest draw to this channel is my personality and my style of content. Even though most of you right now have subscribed for a Xenoblade 3 Nuzlocke, and that may be your only interest, I hope that some of you will still choose to watch the other videos that I make about different games, even if you've not even heard of them before. If you're watching this video in the days or weeks immediately after it comes out, then you are really important to the future trajectory of this channel. Every other content creator you've ever known started from a tiny audience. And hopefully in however many years' time, when I'm big and famous and have conquered the entire world, you can look back and say that you were here for the start of it all. And chances are that if you've genuinely made it all the way to the end of this video, you're already interested in what's coming next. So really, a big thank you to you who are watching this video. And I really hope we get along, because if we don't, he will come for you. But it's okay, you don't have to like what I do or what I make, as long as you're respectful about it, and after a point just leave me alone and let me do my own thing. Since I'm recording this video a good few weeks before it goes live, I can't outright confirm the dates of upcoming streams or videos. But please check the YouTube community tab, which a while ago was renamed to Posts. That is where I will currently be placing all of these stream schedules. I know that some of you might start asking about things like whether I should be streaming on Twitch rather than YouTube, whether we'll have a Discord server. Right now, none of that exists, and it's just gonna be me here on YouTube. And I don't really have a plan as to when any of those other things might start to happen. And I'm not going to make one. I'm just gonna let that be and play it by ear as things go. That's the real conclusion to this video. Despite all these ideas I've touted and short-term plans or long-term plans I may have made, my biggest plan of all is to just go with the flow. As long as I know at any given moment what the next couple of streams are or videos I need to edit, that's all I really need for right now. All of the ideas suggested in this video have neglected to mention that there are other games coming out in the future that will be added to my shortlist, ones that we don't even know about yet. If Xenoblade 4 comes out, I'm just gonna quit content for a month and play that, as I'm sure are many of you. I know that I have a lot of learning to do in ways that I don't even realize yet, and I do fear that some of these early streams are gonna be a much bumpier ride than I expect, especially if numbers are lower than I expect. But I am also confident that in a few months or say a year's time, I can look back and be proud of whatever improvements and progress that I have made. It's a complete coincidence that this video ended up being made at the start of a new year. It was only ever planned to be released alongside the other video, which was just gonna come out whenever it was ready. But this feels right, doesn't it? A new start with a new vision. Perhaps I've accidentally committed to doing a yearly look back and look forward of the channel, before it's even begun. And hey, maybe that's a good thing. I really hope that this is the start of something special, and not an adventure inevitably leading to its doom. So thank you so much for watching, and remember that our future awaits.
I see you by the door, so just walk through, don't take too long, 'cause everything you've said, you'll find